Hello. Hello, welcome to the Everyday Ordinary Extraordinary podcast. I'm Martina and I'm here with Christina, and we are deep divers and avid students of life and powerful facilitators for healing. In real life, I'm a life coach specializing in parent and women empowerment, and I'm also a sound healer.
And I'm a massage therapist who loves to blend intuitive healing, energy work to provide customized holistic services for my clients. We both love to work with essential oils, crystals, angelic Reiki, intuitive guidance, and oracle decks just to vibe up our work.
And we were inspired to create this podcast after pondering on this question. What would a world look like where we can be inspired by every person? Usually, we are very quick to compare and judge ourselves and others. And when we do that, everybody's losing. So, depending on my point of view, I can either feel small because I come out lacking, or arrogant and dismissive because I feel superior. And those are the only two options. And neither of those options make us feel good. So, here's our thought: someone's everyday normal is someone else's extraordinary. Judgment comes from first impressions. And we invite you, the listener, to go beyond first impressions and see the magic everywhere. There is inspiration at every corner, in everyone, if we're willing to look. And today we're here with Trina, all the way from Canada. So welcome, Trina. Why don't you tell our listeners who you are?
Hi, great. Thanks for having me, ladies. My name is Trina Gower. I am from northern British Columbia, Canada, in a small town called Dawson Creek. No, it's not Dawson's Creek like the TV show you're all used to, but it is the world famous Alaska highway, Dawson Creek, that connects our countries. So this town that I live in, it's the mile zero post. So it's the start of the Alaska highway. So we get a lot of our fellow American neighbors coming through our territory to travel through to see Alaska. So that's such a treat and a pleasure to have that opportunity. So I've been mixing with my American neighbors for many years in this land. I have lived here my whole life. I come from a native background. It's a blended background, actually. I'm a Cree Métis woman. Métis means French Canadian and Native Canadian combined. So I have two Native grandmothers. One's Cree, full Indigenous Cree. One's Métis, so half Native, half white. And two non-Indigenous grandfathers. One's Polish and one's Irish. I have a really mixed blend of heritage and culture behind me. But living here in the North, I've really gravitated towards my Cree culture and my Cree grandparents my Cree grandmother who guided me to basically becoming the true version, the whole version of myself through an experience I had about 15 years ago when I kind of stepped into my mediumship after she passed away. And that was a pretty remarkable experience. So, sometimes when we're looking for ourselves to find out who we are, we kind of go through the Rolodex of our ancestors and our lineage and what nation are we, what color are we, what territory are we from. But really, what I've learned is it's your soul, each soul has its very own unique design. And each person was given a soul contract, a soul signature, I actually prefer to call it. And those are all the little bits and elements that we're assigned to come down and learn in life. So I feel really grateful that I've had this contract with my grandmother who could walk me into this version and this reality of intuition and mediumship and understanding culture, but understanding ourselves from the inside out on our soul's mission.
Wow, that is beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
Trina, from the moment I heard from you by our mutual friend Danielle, I was like, "Oh, I really need to know you. Like, I need to know who you are." And then the first time we met over Zoom, obviously, because you're a little far from me. Maybe one day we'll meet in person. It was just like, oh yes, thank you. I um, there's a light about you that I so appreciate and I'm so drawn to. So thank you
Yeah.
for being you. Thank you for having done all the work that you needed to do to get where you are today. And let me ask you this: if we really knew you, what would we know? If we really knew you?
One of the big parts of my soul signature is I am a humanitarian. If you knew me, you would know how much I love people and humanity as a whole and as a topic. So when I really sit down to create something or meet someone or sit with someone, I'm always thinking of the bigger impact of how this can affect the greater good. And it's in every cell of my body. So if you really knew me, you would know at the core of my being, I am an absolute humanitarian.
Mm.
I love to help people. I love to make impact on the world at large, say. So for example, I would take a topic that might be difficult and people would have a hard time speaking of it. Maybe say something like sexual abuse or um, I don't even want to say racism because I'm not sure that I really believe that that's the underlying difficulty that people have in different nations. But let's just say difficult topics, I feel like they need addressed, and I feel like they need to be recalibrated. And when we dive into them and dissect them, they're not usually the thing we thought they were. There's other underlying causes, right? So I like to have difficult conversations and on purpose change the dynamics of topics and habits that we've been stuck in for a really long time. Because most times, they're just habits. They're just programming and habits that we've been bestowed on or trapped in, and we don't even realize it's just an old habit. Can we see things differently? Are we brave enough to crack the eggshell and make a version of that same story? Can we do it differently?
Are we brave enough, right?
Hmm.
What you're saying reminds me a little bit of Byron Katie's work. Like her question, is it true? Is it true? Do you absolutely know that that's the truth, right?
Right.
And yeah, and she follows it up with other questions, but that's the beginning, right? The questioning.
And
What
it might have been the truth seemingly in that era. But what is the new truth? What are we making now? How are we recreating that story now to higher benefit and to impact people in a more of a remarkable way? Like we're all here growing and evolving. So are we all open to transforming, old paradigms? And it helps when we're willing to do it together, to see things differently.
And I think these kind of conversations are part of that, right? When you can sit down with different people and see things from different perspectives and tease out different thoughts, it helps you to really see that there's other ways to see things from other than the one way you've always seen it. So it's good stuff.
and it is in the collective, right? It's not just a person alone cannot, we can only go so far in our deep dive because we need the interaction and we need the different inputs to kind of see different facets of
Yeah.
one topic.
Yeah, and we're evolving so much now on this planet, and we're ascending, which basically means to rise in consciousness. And we're ascending to this place where we all have to look at ourselves from the inside out. We all, you know, will benefit from revisiting old stories that we've told ourselves about certain topics and then moving that storyline because we're programmed. We've been programmed forever and ever and ever about different topics that we don't even know how we believe what we believe or why we think what we think. But what if we were a little more conscious about it and decided, okay, let's move this philosophy and this ideology together to transform how people behave and how we can all better behave amongst one another and how we can all learn what actual love is. Like we say, I love you, and I'm sure we mean it, but lots of times we're not really thinking about what that word means behind the statement. What is love? What does, how are we impacting humanity with our being individually and then collectively, like you're saying? It is a collective movement.
Good stuff. All right, I'm throwing the ice
Hold on.
question.
So
Yep.
there's so you're talking about love, and for me, like, yes, it's like, what's the definition of it? But it's like, how does it feel, right? Where do I feel it? How does it feel? Like a more, like there's again, different facets of that. It's a concept, right? It's a concept out there. So sorry, I'm gonna be quiet now, Christina.
You're fine, Martina. I was like, I'm just gonna throw out our icebreaker question. Tell us a funny, silly, or embarrassing story about yourself.
Well, when I was starting my journey in mediumship, I used to host these retreats called the Be Real retreats, and I was on Vancouver Island hosting a really big one. It was kind of the wrap up for a 10-year sort of decade stretch that I was doing these retreats, and they're spiritual retreats, meditation retreats. And I had other speakers all of the time coming to these events, but this time I was putting myself on the stage because I just opened up in my mediumship lane and I was like, wow, I'm just going to give it a whirl and I'm just going to go for it because I was with two other mediums who were seasoned veterans and I felt safe with them. And I just thought I would just lightly go out there and just put myself out and take a step and try. And I knew it was risky because I was new, but I felt very compelled to do this. Well, I get out there. It's my first night ever doing a group session. I had done some small readings by myself, in close quarters, but this is my first group event. Never mind to say there was 50 people in the audience and two other seasoned mediums. And lo and behold, I could feel my ancestors, my Indigenous ancestors start coming in, and they were coming in to talk, like coming in intuitively, coming in to talk to me. And what happened was I said to them, like, I could feel my body changing and all this stuff, and I could feel my body starting to sway, and I could feel the native ancestors coming, and they started to talk to me, and they said, now, now, now. And I'm like, what's now? Logically, I'm like, what's now? What's now? Anyways, there's an Indigenous fella sitting in the chair, not very many men at the event, an Indigenous fella. And lo and behold, um, I have to sit down in front of him and I have to start reading him as the very first reader of this event. So I was up, my knees were shaking. I was really nervous because I thought, oh my gosh, but in this intuition state, you have to listen to what the guides are saying. You have to. They're guiding you. So they kept saying now, now, now. And then my logical brain was saying, what now? And they just said now, now. And then I was guided to walk and sit in front of this man. He was about 30 years old or something like that. And I had to sit down in front of him. And I am not a singer. I mean, I would break glass if I even attempted to sing, but I had to sit in front of him and I had to put my nose to his nose and I had to sing and I had to throat sing hiya, 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 hiya to him in his face. And I've never sang before, but I had a whole big chant song come right out in his face. And then there was my mother-in-law over here and all these other people who have not seen me anywhere in that capacity because I'm just not a singer. Anyways, long story short, this young guy was like, oh my God. And then I was like, it was just so wild. It just came out of me. And then it was over and I felt really embarrassed about it because I thought I've never done that. I have no idea how to do that. Anyways, there's also a videographer filming the event. And then in the morning when I was getting my hair done with all my team and friends and hairdressers, I said, oh my God, that was so terrible. Like, I can't believe that happened. Like, how did that happen? And then I said, it must have been just terrible. And then my friends said, they were all laughing. And they said, no, we knew it wasn't you because it was actually good. Right. And anyway, so that was like that was a really compelling, embarrassing point because I had to put myself in such a vulnerable place and I had to listen. I had no idea how it was being received or what was happening. And then to have my friends, validate the next day. And it was just something I had to do beyond myself that I have clearly not forgotten because I was like devastated, shocked, nervous, insecure, the whole nine doing that bit, but I've never had to do it again either, by the way. So that was nice.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
But there's
Yes.
so many good tidbits in that. About just how much we judge ourselves, right? Like, and how much we doubt our intuition, right? It's like, oh, am I doing it right? Am I listening? Am I not listening? Um, but then when you get that validation in the end of that it was brilliant, then you're like, oh, oh, all right, I am getting this right. Okay, okay, that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, well, but at
Yeah,
the
but
same time, the people who know her said, well, we knew it wasn't you because because you're so horrible. So I'm like, okay.
Always count on your friends for that. Keep you humble.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they do. But I would say that was one that really left a mark for me.
So what do you consider to be your superpower?
I feel like my superpower is my courage. People always tell me how strong I am, and that's nice, but it's not always the gift it seems. But courage is something I feel um, is one of my God-given gifts because I had the courage to stand up on that stage and just whatever it is. I feel like courage is my superpower. I'll just put it like that.
Yeah.
And it's different than strength,
Mm.
right?
Yes. Because when you go up and you're courageous enough to go up, you're still absolutely terrified. You just go anyways.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
it's doing what needs to be done because that's what needs to be done.
that's
And
right.
it can be seen as strength, but it is actually a little different.
Yeah. And I feel like I see, you know, how everybody is our mirror. I see a lot of people that don't lean into their courage and don't choose courage. And I feel disappointed by that sometimes. But I know it's each individual on their own journey, of course. But it's something I can recognize and see.
But that also comes from seeing the best in them too, right? Which they're not seeing in themselves yet. So
Yes.
it's just about holding that space until they're ready to see it
Yeah.
themselves.
And I mean, I'm sure we're all like that, but I really do see the best in everyone. I see the best all the time. So I'm like, why can't you see it? Why can't you see it? It's right there, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's my mission, not theirs as well.
Do you see the
Yeah.
best in yourself?
Sorry?
Do you see the best in yourself?
Sometimes, and
Yeah.
sometimes not, right?
That's the thing, right? We see it in others. We don't really recognize it in ourselves often.
Yeah, so if we took that mirror analogy and started practicing with it more, right? I wonder what would happen then.
Yes.
Mhm.
And we say, oh, let's take our power back. Let's be courageous. Let's step into it. But what does that really mean? How do we really do that? Right? I
Yeah.
can tell you you're perfect all day long, Martina and Christina, but unless you feel it, unless you do it, it won't happen. And I know that's the same for me as well, right?
Sure. It's having grace for yourself on those days when you didn't get enough sleep and you didn't get the chores done. Can you just be like, I'm still a success today. I am not a failure because I did not tackle my to-do list. And that's for me, that's the spaces I'm working on now. Those are the blind spots for me that's time to tackle.
I think that's beautiful. And I feel like we need that reminder more often, Christina, because those are those are really small details, but they feel huge sometimes, right? Like we didn't sweep the floor, we didn't do the dishes or whatever the things are. They feel giant, but they're really, really just tiny aspects of the big picture. But if we spent more time really cultivating and nurturing our relationships with each other and working on the love bit, like you said earlier, Martina, I think that is where our attention should be put, especially in this day and age. I wrote a book in 2015 called Become, Begin to Be, and it was channeled by my Indigenous grandmother. She passed away, and so she channeled this book to me. And I was not a writer. I had no intentions of being an author of any sort, but my channel was wide open. And so we shared the story together. And when she came through, it was really, really remarkable because the main theme of her story was how to love, how to do it. And it sounds so simple, but it actually is complicated, right? And so
Mhm.
what she does is she really simplifies it in the book. The mission of humanity is love, but we often get so swayed away.
it is simple. It's not easy, right? Because we get in our own way, right? It's for me one of the things that I am, I believe whenever we are at that point where the next growth edge is, there is all that self-doubt, at least for me, that is creeping in, right? And several times a day I have to say, no, not this one. No, thank you. No, I'm not listening. No, and it's like, who am I to teach this? Who am I to do this? Who am I? But this is my job. Nobody else can do it the way I do it, right? If each one of us is unique, nobody can do our job. Nobody can do our work. Job is a little, but nobody can do our work. Nobody can do what we came here to do. So there's no person that is superfluous. But we
No.
don't know that about ourselves, right? We don't know, we've not learned that, we've not been trained or educated in that, right?
What's really interesting though is when I go into channel and I am talking to the spirit guides and the ancestors, what I hear over and over and over again is that life is simply the school of love. We're, that is our only mission here, is to learn how to love.
Yes. Yes. Nothing else to say.
Nothing else matters beyond that.
Well,
Right.
I was thinking to what Martina was saying, that on the flip side of that, Martina, is no one could truly understand us and what we need. So we really have to be able to communicate our needs, because if each person is unique, what I need to make me happy and what someone else needs to make them happy is going to be completely different. And if I can't learn to communicate what I need, expecting someone else to figure it out and make me happy is really going to make me fail, right? Like, it's a failing conversation. It's expecting my boyfriend to just figure out what I need, or somebody else, right? Like, I need to be able to communicate what I need, whether it's time together or time apart or whatever, right? I need to be able to communicate that and not keep expecting other people to just read my mind and fulfill those expectations.
Actually, I think it goes further than that. It's actually, we have to start giving ourselves what we need before
Yes.
from others, right? So it's like,
Well, but that's part of it. Like, what I need is either space or time, and that's all part of that, right? It's all communicating what I need to make me happy. Yeah.
And that's just it. So if we're here learning how to love, it does start with ourselves first, but it also says in the book that loving ourselves is a difficult task because people don't know how to do that either.
Yeah.
So in the book, she directs you to actually start practicing with loving others first.
Yeah.
Because it's easier.
It is. Yeah.
So if we get the momentum of loving other people first, then we can see and feel it and recognize it, and then we can integrate it back to ourselves. So it was just a really, really beautiful encounter that I had with her, knowing that she was here. And in real life, my grandmother was not, she was a religious person from the Catholic Church. I wouldn't call her spiritual in any way. In fact, we had an arrangement when she got to the other side that I asked her to send me messages when she got over there. And she didn't really like that idea at the beginning of our conversation. She didn't believe in it. But then on her deathbed, we sort of had an agreement, so to speak. And 6 months later, she came. But what she came back like was still herself, but with an elevated degree of love and consciousness. So going to this place that we would all call, say, heaven or the great beyond or whatever you want to call it, um, it's like they get their certification in love there. They get their diploma, right? And then now they're here as guides and mentors teaching us. So if there's a lot of turmoil on planet Earth, what I've been told time and time again is that our only ammo is love. So how do we take what's being served to us in, the real world experiences in the 3D world, and how do we evolve it with consciousness and love. And that's our great mission. So here we are together, the three of us, working on it right now, doing our part, just like you said, Martina, right? Nobody can do it like we can do it. And we can't do it like they can do it. So if we took the hot potato, so to speak, the hot potato of love, then we work with that and, pass it back. And I remember you were saying it was about feeling, Martina. And there's we could spend the whole hour talking about what love feels like, looks like, etc. But for the people listening, I feel like if we talk to them from their heart space, we could start to understand that a little easier.
Yeah. And it's so challenging, right? Because we have all our baggage, right? I was just thinking, we learned how to relate by watching what our parents modeled and what their parents modeled for them. And so there's nobody really to blame, right? Nobody learned it. There's no place where it actually can come from other than us hitting pause and looking at, like, dissecting in a way, right? What is going on and what works for me, and how do we make it work, and what do I need, and as a little bit as Christina was saying, but really coming back to healing those parts of us.
Yes. And we didn't have mentors to teach us, and we still kind of don't, but we're looking for them and we're becoming them, right? And so I had a really great mentor teacher helping me tap into the frequency of love. So I feel like I understand that much more deeply now. But also with my grandma, before the spiritual journey, before she crossed over, I felt absolute unconditional love from that woman. And she's the only person in my life where I 100% felt that from. And so I feel like I have an understanding of what it is. Do I have the knowledge and practice of delivering that like she did? No, not yet, but I'm working on it.
It's going to say we're all work in progress, right? We're constantly work in progress, and that's the beauty in a way of life too, right? That's what makes it rich as well, right? Whenever there is, like, a subject that keeps coming up for me is like the friction, right? The little discord, the something to rub against that has us examine, right? If there wouldn't be that, it would be a little boring and
Mhm.
stale and stagnant, you know.
Evolving, right? We're humans and we're meant to evolve. So, right, the versions of us that we had before, but I feel like now we're all aiming for the sense of peace and love, and it's sort of like a collective desire, right? So what we're seeking will also attract. So we have to be open to the idea that we are love and it's coming and we're creating it even more every day, even though we're kind of shooting in the dark a little bit, but we are looking for the light.
Yeah. So, in line with all this, tell us about the time you took a chance for love. And it might not be romantic love, but it might be, whatever it is.
When I took a chance on love, the thing that comes up for me was I met my husband 32 years ago. And I literally just saw this man driving down the highway. I was 16, he was 18, driving down the highway in his vehicle, and we literally just passed each other. And he didn't see me, but I saw him, and I'm like, who's that person? And in our young years, driving around in the vehicle, cruising around, I said, let's follow him. So we went to the store and followed him to the store. And I introduced myself kind of to him in a long story short kind of manner. But it was like I instantly recognized this person. Never seen him before in my life, but I instantly knew I had to know this man, right? Kind of like what you were saying earlier, Martina, about meeting. But I had to, and I instantly knew that he was the man I had ordered. So when I was a little girl, I always daydreamed, like I'm talking 8, 9 years old, because I was a native girl living in a pretty difficult life. My family was pretty difficult. There was a lot of tragedies and heavy things I had to navigate. So my grandma, that same native grandma told me when I was little, she said, make sure you marry a white man. So I had this programming in my head that I was supposed to marry a white man to sort of wean our way out of the native culture because it was difficult. Okay. But then when I saw this white man at 16, I was like, that's him. I knew I would daydream that I wanted a blonde hair, blue-eyed, good-looking, hardworking white man that was also a hero. Like I needed a hero to come save me. That's what I was thinking because there was a lot of abuse and a lot of things happening that I really wanted to get away from. So lo and behold, I introduced myself to this guy. Only that the first time I saw him, I introduced myself to him. Like there was nothing. Then lo and behold, we end up meeting at a gathering concert kind of thing. And we end up dating. I end up marrying him. He ends up becoming a firefighter. So that's typically what we call a hero, right? So when I was little, I call it placing my order with the universe. I was asking, I want this guy, and he fit the description perfectly. And to this day, now he's the fire captain. So he did rescue me out of that lifestyle, and all that stuff happened. So when I took a chance on it was because I was saying to the universe, this is what I want. This is how I need to be saved. This is what I need to get out of here. Please help me, in my own little kid prayers. And then lo and behold, the second I saw him, I went for it. I took that chance. I was completely out of my, wheelhouse, my reality, but I just did it and I knew instantly. And here we are 32 years later.
Wow. Beautiful story.
Thank you. So it was on love. It took a chance on love there, and it paid off.
So Trina, what fills you up? What recharges your batteries so that you have to give to all the people in your world?
I love to create. So creating fills my soul. So if it's a new podcast or a film or a book or a business or, you know, creating gatherings for people, bringing people together, that really fills my soul. So I'm alone a lot in my creations. I meditate all the time. I do all of that stuff. So I'm full there. That's easy. But it's the creation and the creating something new that hasn't been done before is what fills my soul. Mhm.
Lovely.
So if you had a magic wand and you could give people any quality, what would it be and why?
Self-respect.
Hmm.
I would give them self-respect because I feel like that's one of the massive underlying currents of a lot of our issues in everyday life. I don't think we recognize it, but I feel like it compels us in all sorts of ways that can cause havoc and can ruin relationships. So sometimes when we don't respect ourselves, we don't respect others.
Yeah.
I think that's mostly, right? A lot of things we do is because we don't respect ourselves.
Yeah, and we project.
Trina, who do you want to be when you grow up? So if you could be or do anything, if money and time weren't an option, no restrictions, no limitations, what would you be?
The world's greatest film producer.
Ooh.
Yeah, I always wanted to be in film. So when I was a little girl, I dreamt about movies all the time, but I didn't dream of being the movie star. I dreamt of being the person in the back. I saw the film reels, I saw the makeup drawers, the mirrors with the lights, I saw the doors with the signs on them, and I did all of that. I saw it over and over and over and over again as a little kid. And then I ended up becoming a portrait photographer in my town for 25 years. And I owned a design studio and had publishing and all this other stuff in it. And so I was really kind of in love with the camera for a long, long, long time. But then when my spirituality kind of kicked its own door open, I had to put that camera down. I just couldn't do both. It was like a really logical business versus a sort of intuitive business, and I was struggling to do both. So I let go of my 25-year career as a photographer and put it down. But lo and behold, just a few years ago, I started channeling movies. So my childhood dream, which I believe are part of our soul signatures, like we're assigned to them, right? So I'm now channeling three different films, writing one right now, and my goal is to have one filmed in 2 years. So that's my big goal. Yeah.
How exciting.
Well, you did a little one, right? With the People for Peace, you did the like a what is it, 20 minutes or something like that, right? Which,
Yeah, so I did my first 20-minute documentary called People for Peace. It was inspired by a dream I had with Mr. John Lennon. And that was a movement he did back in his era. And so he brought that forward. So I was picked up by a TELUS TV company in Canada known as TELUS Story Hive. And they featured my first documentary on their show, or on the channel, sorry. And that's going to be up for 2 years. I also have that on YouTube as well. So it's my documentary, People for Peace, which I followed up with a podcast as well. So I'm kind of working on that project, to get my experience with the film world and the camera world and get that kind of door opened, but also to fulfill that mission I had with the visit from John Lennon. I felt very compelled to take that piece of information and kind of pay it forward and move it forward. So I'll be working on that continually with my podcast as well. But ultimately, the movies that I'm making are for the sake of impacting humanity. So that's the goal.
of course, that's who you are, right? That's true and true who you are at in every moment. Now, let me ask you, is it true that you didn't know who John Lennon is?
It's true. I had heard his name before, but I didn't know who he was. I didn't listen to the Beatles. I didn't know what he looked like. I was like something about glasses, some guy, but it wasn't my beat. I didn't have any knowledge of what the Beatles, I didn't even know what they did. So anyways, I really did a lot of research after that dream, and I know who John Lennon is.
I was sharing with someone and they were like, really? She didn't know? I'm like, I think that's what she had said. That she didn't
I
know.
heard of him kind of, but I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about the band, nothing. So I was like, that's old people's music. That was where I was. And now I like quite love it. I got lots of their songs now.
Oh my, so funny. So I want to ask you a question. I want to kind of backtrack a little. I know you talked about your grandma being a big influence, but you also said that she wasn't that spiritual. So what was the catalyst or how did you notice that you had this medium or this clairvoyance? Was there something that sparked that was there?
Yeah, so 3 years before she passed away, we were in her house, and like I said, strong Catholic woman. She has, her nightly practice, she church every week, all of the things. However, I had this gut instinct because she was really starting to look really frail and her hair was falling out, all the aging things. And my husband just kept warning me. He said, your grandma, because he knew how close we were, he's like, just to let you know, it's getting close. It's getting close. So I listened to him. He's very practical and logical. And so I trusted what he was saying. And I said to her, I said, Grandma, she looked really, really scared at her house. And I said, Grandma, why do you look so scared? And she said, Birdie, and that's my nickname. She goes, I don't know whether I'm going up or down. And I said, oh, Grandma, you're a good girl. You go to church, you do all the things. You're definitely going up. And she's like, are you sure? Do you mean that? How do you know? And I said, oh, I know. And I was just doing it to be really lighthearted, to kind of ease some of her anguish. But I didn't know anything. And I just felt like I have to be her cheerleader, right? I have to keep her up. So I repeated that. And you know how as they get older, they start repeating their stories. So we repeated this story a few times. And then I finally said, Grandma, how about this? When you get to the other side, why don't you send me some messages? And she was like, no, no, in her strong Cree tongue. And she was not having it. And I said, well, no, like Indigenous people always love photos of family. Like there's photos of every uncle twice removed on the wall. in the bathroom, in the hall, you name it, every person's face is on that wall somewhere, right? And I said, well, how about this? And my whole family was into photography because I was into photography. So everybody had portraits everywhere. I said, how about this? When you get to the other side, why don't you mess with my pictures? She's like, what? I said, I don't know, turn them around. And this is coming from nowhere because I was not really spiritual yet. Okay. I had some odd encounters, but nothing that logically clued me in. And then she said, well, she was confused. And I was like, I don't know, no. And I said, well, I don't know, turn them around, drop them off the wall, upside down, just anything strange with photos, and I will know it's you. And she's like, yeah. And then she's like, I think contemplating like if she goes to church, is that working in the dark? Like, is that going to be legit with the church, right? But I just kept assuring her, oh, it's fine. It's just me, Grandma. It's just you and me. And I said, if Grandma, if anyone can do it, you and me, we can do it. And she's like, she kept doing this no thing to me. But then on her deathbed, she was struggling and she couldn't breathe and stuff like that. And so I said to her, I went over and I held her hands and I put my nose to her nose and I said, Grandma, do not forget about the pictures. And then she said in her very light breath, do you mean that? Her eyes were gray and she was definitely on her way out the door, so to speak, right? She goes, do you mean that? And I said, yes. She pointed at the door and she said, you go now. And she kicked me out of the room. She didn't want me there when she was passing. And I was kind of glad to go, to be honest, because I hadn't seen a person pass away before. So I was like, okay. So I leave, I go home. An hour later, they call me back to the hospital. She's gone. But 6 months later, pictures started falling off walls, rolling down hallways, turning corners, emailing themselves to me at home, at work, like all over the place. And then the signs began. And that's when my spiritual door kicked wide open. And I started hearing her loudly and clearly. I'd be having lunch with someone at a restaurant. I need to grab a napkin to write down what she's saying. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just winging it. Like I was just going, trusting whatever was happening. And so she became spiritual once she crossed over, to answer your question.
Wow.
And she brought you along in a way.
Yes. And because that's how it works. So when we ask for something, it gets delivered. And I call that placing your order with the universe. I have a little more experience with it now, but back then it was all pretty willy-nilly, right? And so I always say to my clients, when I'm doing readings with them, I'll just say, well, place your order, ask. The universe delivers it in the best way it can. And so you have to be open to not getting in the way of the universe's, construction of what they're going to award you with, so to speak. Like, who would have thought I would have ordered my husband at 8 years old and then got him? Do you know what I mean? There's so many other versions that I have like that I just know it works.
I truly believe that too. Like I know with my children, I was so clear. What I wanted, and not in an arrogant way, right? Because then you have to be detached and to get what you get. And then you get a little challenge with the whole thing. Because otherwise there's no growth. But, in a silly way, I would say my first son, my first child is gonna look like the dad, right? And it's like dark brown hair, dark brown eyes, his whole face. It just really is. If you look at the picture of them, you will know, right? And I always tell people, you just ask for what you think you want. You might get whatever you get, but you can always ask, right? There's always that, right? So yeah. Yes.
Sometimes people think, well, I didn't ask for this. I got this big problem and I did not ask for it, right? But that's also to do with like the soul's assignments and things like that were assigned to do some of these lessons. But I would encourage everyone to just experiment with asking very clearly and see what happens.
I usually tell people to be as specific as possible. Like I have a friend who asked for this ideal job and she got it, but it was like about 2 hours away. So she had to commute, right? She forgot
that part.
that part.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, you have to be as specific as possible. when asking.
Yeah.
So, yes, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for all these answers. Now, let me ask you the last one. What are you most proud of? Like, what do you consider your biggest accomplishment?
My biggest accomplishment is breaking free from the chains that held me down in regards to family abuse, familial stories, and belief systems that no longer work. I feel most proud that I was able to walk out of restrictive mentalities, behaviors, ideologies, and not intertwine them into my family going forward.
Ooh, big deal.
Powerful stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
Clearing up the future.
Well, we have to claim our role in society. And we can say, well, my family did that, so that's where I'm at, or that's what was served to me, so that's what I know. But I feel like we have to take responsibility for um, leaving a legacy behind us that we are responsible for. Taking ownership of our role here on planet Earth in the human lane and giving our best and making sure that we have done as much as we can do. And we make mistakes. I can't tell you how many mistakes I've made in my life, a million. But what I consciously do is evaluate, where can I do better? Where can I release stories that are not mine? How can I rewrite a new script for the lineage that I'm leaving?
And
Ugh.
like responsibility, not as a blame, but
No.
as an I caused it, so I can change it. If I caused it, I can change it, right? Or I get
Well,
a choice in the matter of how it's going to continue.
we're all just writing our own scripts. And you're the director, the producer, the writer, the main character of your own movie. What are you writing? And when we stop blaming the people that came before us, then we can take authority and create on purpose going forward.
Ooh. So I think this is the perfect note to tell us about your business and what you offer and how people can get in touch with you if they're interested.
Fabulous. So I like to work online. I do readings online, so I can do your intuitive reading, connect to your loved ones, angels, ancestors. I love to help people find their soul's mission and, kind of help them establish what their soul signature is. And when we know our soul signature, it's easier to step into those natural born gifts and pathways that we're all seeking. So if you're stuck or blocked or, searching for that secret piece of information, that's what I love to do for people. So I'm available online at trinagower.com. I also have my podcast, People for Peace, going online as well. And I am, like I said, there's just films coming up, but the best way to find me is always my website. And it's Trina with a Y, Tryna.
Fantastic. And like always, all the notes for Trina's information, well, all the information for Trina will be in the notes of the podcast, along with Martina and myself. Trina, thank you so much for being here with us today. I wish we had another hour to deep dive some more, but maybe we'll have to revisit this in the future. Thank you, everyone out there, for listening today. If you loved what you heard, please share with your friends. Please leave us a review. And please remember, you are extraordinary and you rock. Until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye for now. Trina, you want to say goodbye?
Peace.